Seems like the video on Pokemon Fool's Gold will have to wait a little bit, as this time, to put it in a statement that is simultaneously an exclamation and a transparency statement, I have an obligation to fulfill. And to be quite fair, no matter how long it takes, I usually like trying to keep my word. Especially because, in this case, this was something I was looking forward to for quite a while, and there is a little bit of backstory as to how I became aware of this one. See, I'm in one private Discord server where a lot of throwback shooters get discussed a lot, and this one eventually came up. It turns out the developer of this is in there and also wanted to try to grab somebody to help test the game, as well as have some of us watch it. I kind of didn't go with either, to be honest. I said when I went around to looking at it, I wanted to go in as completely blind as possible, and so here we are today. The most I know is what's on the Steam page and that the developer is currently trying his heart out on this, so let's just put our critical lens on and dive right into Beyond Sunset. Now, for this video, we're not delving into any of the story whatsoever. Cyberpunk stories tend to be beefy most of the time. This is a demo after all, so more of the framework for the game is more important than the story at the moment. So for probably what will be the only bit of nerd talk for this game is running in GZ Doom, which is turning out to be one of the more old reliable choices when it comes to making anything with elements of a throwback shooter. But we'll come back to engine notes as we go along, so for the time being, let's just throw Lucy into the thick of things. I wonder why the private server is telling me to play on easy, though. So the game pretty much immediately begins with a combat simulation as the tutorial. It's brief, it's snappy, and it offers everything in a non-intrusive manner. It starts with the surprisingly smooth for GZ Doom, but still a little bit jank platforming, and then it introduces you to the katana, which is pretty much almost never used again. It also introduces you to the pistol, which is an interesting trade-off starter gun. The reason why I call it a trade-off is that it has unlimited ammo and has a charge shot that's pretty beefy. But it's not hit scan and the projectile fired isn't exactly the fastest. It makes for a decent fallback weapon, but it's also not going to be used that often. The last thing you're introduced to in the combat tutorial is a power move of sorts. Essentially, it recharges over time and acts sort of like a Doom 2016 glory kill, but with an area of effect. The last thing the tutorial will teach you, if you choose to look for it, is about secret points. For a staple of any throwback shooter, it's quite appropriate that it's in a maze that looks like an old Windows screensaver. But I suppose it would be quite trite if we played the whole game in a simulation, huh? Let's wake up. Once the game properly begins, it continues to ease you into the gameplay by having the first section be almost entirely platforming. It's ultimately a good choice because platforming is not something that this engine is known for making good. And this game does have tools to compensate for that, primarily a revolutionary thing called ledge grabbing, where the character will automatically propel herself up a ledge. In addition, the game also gives you a double jump and autosaves pretty generously, I should say. But one will come to a hospital lobby, and you can spend that little secret point on some upgrades here. I'm not the best at first-person shooter games, so I went for the health upgrade. But hey, all you gotta do is suffer for a bit with a katana, having only a melee weapon to send enemies to their final destination, and then back to the pistol for a bit before you get your first good gun. The SMG is where the guns start crossing the line from acceptable to actually solid. Plus, with that little interface spoiler about dual wielding, you might want to invest that upgrade point into ammo capacity. But now we make our way into a corporate lobby into what is totally not an arena with a phone ringing. Here, one gets their objectives. Destroy the ICE mainframe, jack into Xanadu and steal the hash file, and then call him back. Once he hangs up, hey, look, it's an arena after all. The dual SMGs one will have at this point, absolutely wonderful. Completely good, completely kick-ass. Too bad they're about to get completely outclassed. Proceeding into the greenhouse, though, you'll notice one thing about the game right off the bat, and that is that you constantly unlock shortcuts. There's a little bit of backtracking, so it does make your life a lot easier. But on your way to the lower greenhouses, so you can go blow up some coolant tanks and overheat the ice mainframe, you find it, the combat shotgun. This shotgun is just a little... Yeah, if you can't tell by now, this shotgun is absolutely ridiculous and I love it. With the sole exception of the boss, this is the only gun I use for the rest of the demo, flat up. Even when upgraded, the low max ammo capacity is absolutely justified with this monster. It just packs such an extreme punch and can be used at some absolutely absurd ranges. In fact, I'm going to commit an act of blasphemy against the cabal of shotguns and put it up there with Doom 2's Super Shotgun and Caleb's Sawda. Between the utility and that sound, it is just that good and feels that good to use. So going back into stuff that is not spending a tangent talking about shotguns, after going through a small platforming section above a bottomless pit that really makes you appreciate the double jump and the ledge grab, it turns out the only way to destroy the ice mainframe is to overheat it, so you have to shoot down coolant tanks. And to be fair, one of my few, to be honest, very mild criticisms about the game is that it's kind of vague as to where to go after you take down the first batch. It's made a lot less worse by the earlier mentioned backtracking shortcuts, but still I noticed some in the private Discord kind of having problems with this. But you'll eventually make it there with a little help from the Doom Engine map and the backtracking shortcuts, which will take you to the next shift in gameplay, Xanadu. Xanadu's a bit strange, but it's actually pretty cute in execution. I will say, though, the fact that you're firing projectiles from your hand kinda gives me flashbacks to Tech War. And I kind of hate that I have to reference Tech War. No one should ever have to reference Tech War. I mean, just look at it. Everything's colorful and blocky. Everything from the ice mainframe is just literally chunks of ice. One could argue that the NES/Famicom style sound effects are a little bit cliche, but they're cute here. Granted, one nitpick is that it is a little bit bizarre going from the main game's health system to just hearts. It's also a little bit easy to die on your first go about, but you will quickly learn that the laser for puzzle solving is lethal. The order of the day in Xanadu is puzzle solving, and you need to solve it in just the right order that it allows you to get the hash file. Despite me having a few nitpicks, it's really not the worst that could have been done. Once you get out, though, you need to send the hash file to Raven, which does have one bug. When you hit up the telephone calling Raven to send a hash, he'll first act like you don't have it, then act like you do. But after that, you know the drill. It's arena time. And after that, some romps through some admittedly marvelous-looking downstairs lobby areas. With areas that look like this in the greenhouse areas from earlier in the video, I think there's no doubt that Beyond Sunset, even with just its demo, is a very pretty game. It's kind of a textbook example of stylistic choices mattering more than anything else. But all romps must come to an end, so let's talk about the boss of the demo. The parking attendant from hell called the DX7. I see the joke there, so let me put on some emulated DX7 music to match your DX7 joke there. I spent way more time on this boss than I would personally like to admit. It dies fast, but more importantly, due to the lack of iframes you have, you die fast. In fact, I'm 90% sure that this single boss is why the private server told me to play on easy. In hindsight, I probably could have ducked under some of the bullets, but by that point, I didn't have the muscle memory to do that. It's not really required for most standard gameplay, and I'm sure Secret Hunters could tell me if it's required for that. But you know what? After a bunch of tries, I finally did it. I'm proud enough of the winning run that I'm just going to throw it up on the screen. If you don't want to watch it, just go to the timestamp below. After that boss fight that is simultaneously frustrating and exhilarating, it's time for a plot dump. Which, again, I'm not gonna get into the story until the full release of the game. But after that comes the credits, as well as, you know, the dev giving you a little thank you for playing the game. As well as the blurb that this is a community-funded game. Yes, there is a Patreon, and it will be in the video description for sure. Think of it like a monthly Kickstarter of sorts. Now then, while I put on footage like that greenhouse and the lower greenhouse since I think they look great, what are my thoughts on Beyond Sunset as a whole? I mean, overall, if you can't tell, despite my little bits of criticism, I love it. I've already given you samples of how good it sounds and just how good it looks. But there's a lot of little details underneath the surface as well. Let me show you just what happens if you kill an enemy while they're firing a burst fire weapon. Just, the enemy will keep firing their weapon until that round is done, uncontrollably as they die. It's just those special little details like that, you know, paint this as a labor of love. Plus, with me pumping Karl Vincent's music for most of this video, you all should have an idea of the quality of the music as well. A lot of what nitpicky kind of quirks that are in the game can be fixed as it goes along, obviously. But I would be lying if I didn't say that this is a pretty strong start. And hell, as a matter of transparency, after a move to a fresh new place, I might see about trying to back this myself. After all, I most certainly want to see this one succeed. On the last note before I go to the credits, there are modding tools for this. After all, this is built on GZ Doom. It's a bit harder to show those because I am absolutely abysmal at Doom modding, but I will leave them in the description as well. With that all out of the way, let's roll the credits.